Hey, welcome in. Well, we're going to do another one in our continuing series of Victor Davis Hanson articles. And as you know, we like to do these because Victor Davis Hanson writes a lot more articles than he does TV appearances. And with the articles, he's not constrained by the kind of rules of concision that you have on cable news. He doesn't have to make a point in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 90 seconds or whatever they give him. And like me, you think that he's a very insightful guy with some very important things to say. So it's a lot of fun to do these, and they're quite popular as well. So let's go. This article is Progressive Petards. This was January 19th, 2020. When the left has to live according to its own rules, it will rue the loss of the civilization it destroyed. And that sounds pretty fatalistic, doesn't it? But I think that maybe you do need to have a little, at least entertain a little bit of fatalism when it comes to this stuff, just because it seems like the whole progressive thing is like a train that just, the brakes are broken. And there seems to be a kind of derangement in the mainstream media surrounding all this progressive agenda. And any attempt to kind of urge any kind of caution, like, hold on, we're doing experiments here that we've never done before. Maybe we should slow this down a little bit because things aren't so bad right now. In fact, things are the best they've literally ever been in human history. And maybe we should try and explain that to the progressives so that we can slow them down a little bit. Not just in the United States, in Canada, and Great Britain, everywhere. Anyway, let's take a look at this article. It starts, since at least 2016, CNN has mostly ceased being a news agency. But that hasn't stopped it from being an active participant in #resistance. The network is so caught up in the fervor of this movement that many of its guests and regular hosts have been fired, reprimanded, or apologized for threats to the president or general obscene references. Example, Reza Aslan. That's the guy who ate the human brain. Oh, that was a bad move on his part. The late Anthony Bourdain, who I liked, but he had Trump derangement syndrome, and Kathy Griffin, who, is just, well, that's an example of thinking that, no press is bad press. Sometimes it is. Anyway, it continues, many of its marquee reporters have resigned, were fired, or reassigned for fake news bias. Example, Thomas Frank, Eric Lichtblau, or Lex Harris. Or came under fire for false reporting. Jim Sciutto, Marshall Cohen, and Carl Bernstein. And yeah, that's the Watergate Carl Bernstein. Or have had to offer retractions and or apologies. Gloria Borger, Eric Lichtblau, Jake Tapper, and Brian Rokas. Its anchors have apologized for obscenity, Anderson Cooper, or simply making up false statements, Chris Cuomo, while analysts have been caught in a number of contradictions about their own role in ongoing scandals, James Clapper. And let's just take 1 second to look at one instance here where it's come back to bite them. Hey, if you could just take a second to subscribe, share, or like, that really helps me out. Thanks a lot. CNN settlement with Covington student Nick Sandman, a win for the little guy, expert says. Now that tells us a lot, doesn't it? I mean, first off, they settled the case. It was $275 million with the Covington Catholic student, Nick Sandman, where they just totally smeared him. Where they basically said that he was harassing the guy who was drumming and the black Israelites. And it was all because of he was wearing a Trump hat. Of course, he was just waiting for the bus with his friends. And this happened to him. The agency in this was all on the adults that were harassing these kids. And anyway, it was settled. But anyway, this was settled out of court. And it has to be a lot of money it was settled for. Of course, it didn't get the kind of press that one would have hoped, because other outlets don't want to get sued either. They don't want people that they've lied about to then take up the same cause and look for retribution and justice. But they're saying it's a win for the little guy, expert says. And that says so much, doesn't it? That the little guy has to be protected from CNN, the big international news channel. I just think that's so enlightening. It says so much about the current state of the media. Anyway, let's continue. Throughout CNN's descent into parody, progressives still smiled at the usefulness of CNN for the larger project of delegitimizing the Trump presidency. Few understood the Thucydidean concept that once nihilists destroy norms and protocols of ethical behavior for perceived short-term advantage, they usually rue the loss when they themselves become victims of their own biased zealotry and are in dire need of the civilizational help they recently ruined. So basically, when the little guy can be destroyed by the mainstream media. Now, the damage with like the Covington kids, for example, has been redressed somewhat. So that can still happen. But, if you want to know what happens when, the modern kind of norms of presumption of innocence, for example, are no longer there, or were never there in the first place, well, we know. This is going to sound, this may sound hyperbolic, and maybe it is, but we've just recently heard the Bernie staffers talking about putting people in gulags. So maybe this is appropriate. Great Purge. The Great Purge, or the Great Terror, was a campaign of political repression in the Soviet Union, which occurred from 1936 to 1938. It involved a large-scale purge of the Communist Party and government officials, repression of kulaks, who were affluent peasants. And to be a kulak could just be that you had 3 cows and your neighbors had 1. And the Red Army leadership, widespread police surveillance, suspicion of saboteurs, counter-revolutionaries, imprisonment, and arbitrary executions. Historians estimate the total number of deaths due to Stalinist repression in 1937-38 to be between 680,000 and 1.2 million. And this was just one of the purges. That's just one. So again, maybe that's hyperbolic, but when I see progressives arguing, for hate speech laws and to curb freedom of expression and seem to have no interest in due process or presumption of innocence, that is where it leads, eventually, at the extreme edge. That's why I, for one, am very, very skeptical and wary of this new progressive agenda, which is not the progressive agenda from 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. Anyway, we continue. So it was last week, when CNN moderator Abby Phillip warped the recent Democratic presidential primary debate by not asking, so much as accusing, Senator Bernie Sanders about a claim that he said a woman such as Elizabeth Warren could not be elected president, in the fashion of a "when did you stop beating your wife" question. Quote, Senator Sanders, CNN reported yesterday, and Senator Warren confirmed in a statement, that in 2018 you told her you did not believe that a woman could win the election. Why did you say that? Now, this is supposed to be a news organization, and they're doing primary debates. It's incredible. And they're saying that CNN reported a story, and then Senator Warren confirmed it, confirmed that you'd said this. That's not confirmation. Obviously, Warren leaked it to CNN, and then they asked her, and they consider that confirmation? That's insane. I think Bernie's a crazy communist. And obviously, there's people in his campaign that are literal communists, like revolutionary communists. Some of the things they're saying are terrifying. I'm talking about the stuff that was caught by undercover work like Project Veritas. That's pretty concerning stuff. But the point is that this isn't confirmation of anything. Warren confirming something that she put out is not confirmation. It's incredible. I think the one big hope in the West is that the left really does split in half into moderates and then another party, which is just left-wing fanatics, and just weakens itself and makes itself unviable that way. Anyway, we'll continue. Leftists were outraged at the CNN host's flagrant bias, as if CNN's own Candy Crowley had not attempted to hijack the second 2012 presidential debate to aid favorite Barack Obama, or as if CNN's Donna Brazile had not leaked a debate question to aid Hillary Clinton in 2016. Continuing on, the same irony is on display with the Democratic presidential field. One strange theme has been dominant since the primary debates began. The more the white frontrunners pontificated on diversity and deplored white privilege, the whiter the Democratic field seemed to grow, until there was no non-white candidates left. And actually, let's take a look at this, because it was never that quote-unquote diverse to start with. I consider diversity of opinion. That seems to be the only thing that really matters to me. But that's not the way the left wing looks at it. So let's see who's left. Michael Bennet. And this was on January 13th. Maybe more people have dropped out since then. I'm not sure. Michael Bennet, well, he's not diverse, according to the left. Joe Biden, definitely not. Bloomberg, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Starting to see a pattern here. John Delaney, Klobuchar. I guess she's diverse because she's a woman, even though women are 50% of the population. I don't know. How did women get to be minorities? They're half the population. Anyway, here we have some diversity. Not that it should matter. All that should matter is his ideas. Bernie Sanders, Tom Steyer, Elizabeth Warren. I believe her diversity is, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again right now, she's not Native American, but she is genetically 50% apple streusel. And I'm sticking with that. And I'm trying to get it trending. Hashtag Warren is streusel. I can't do it alone. You have to help me. Anyway, that I think proves our point right there. Let's continue. Perhaps if the Democratic candidates lived by the rules they had enforced on universities or other public agencies, then an underrepresented Cory Booker or Julian Castro would have been by fiat reinstated on the debate stage, and an overrepresented Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg or Buttigieg, or I don't know anymore, the beneficiaries of centuries of white privilege, would be passed over from the opportunity for the greater social good of diversity. Yeah, why do they expect, in every other field other than politics, that these strict racial laws should apply? Not to them. Anyway, let's continue. The idea that a Biden or Warren earned their stronger polling or greater fundraising based on any meritocratic notion of out-debating, out-hustling, out-campaigning, or out-politicking a Harris, Castro, or Booker would be considered not just absurd, but proof of the bias of any who embrace such a structurally racist position. Absurd? Perhaps, but for the rest of the country that has been lectured unceasingly by progressive elite scolds, it was pure schadenfreude. And it is hilarious. It really is. This is comedy. This is why the left no longer likes jokes, because the jokes are best aimed at them because they are the most ridiculous and the most hypocritical. The public likes to point out, comedians especially, like to point out when the emperor has no clothes. That's why the left hates memes. That's why the mainstream media hates memes. That's why they try and, attach it to a movement from Germany in the 1930s and 40s, right? Basically to slander anything or anybody that pokes fun at them, that just laughs at them, because they are hilarious. They're incoherent. And this is a great case that illustrates their incoherence. They are not living up to their own rules on so-called diversity. Anyway, let's keep going. Democrats may also be hoisted by their own petard in the ongoing impeachment psychodrama. They more or less rigged the House impeachment proceeding by using their majority to depart from past practice. They monopolized the witness list, selectively leaked, and rushed to indict Trump on the theory that every day the president was not impeached was another day the country was endangered. And we've seen what the, consequences of that have been, which is just a bunch of rambling, pointless, incoherent speeches, it's in the Senate right now. The president isn't going to be convicted. It is, as far as I can see, just an appeal to the lowest common denominator from Schiff's part and the rest of them. Just making assertions that are unsupported. That's all I can see that's happening. They're even going on about Russian collusion constantly again. I mean, they had their day on that. That day has passed. It looks less like a legal process and more like a therapy session for themselves. I don't know. It's very odd. Anyway, let's finish this off. And the final part is blinding rage. These are strange times in which progressives grow near quiet when courageous Iranians hit the streets to protest a murderous government, but express remorse over the killing of one of the most murderous of all Iranian autocrats. Yeah, Chris Matthews was saying that he was the Iranian Elvis. Well, it looks like things didn't quite turn out that way after all when you see the demonstrations in the streets. Anyway, I haven't seen an apology from Chris Matthews yet, have you? No, of course not. Anyway, we're almost at the end. For years, leftists have decried the bipartisan kid gloves treatment of China, as its mercantilism systematically hollowed out the old democratic blue-collar base in the Midwest, only to blast the first president who agreed that China had to be confronted before it eroded what was left of the American industrial heartland. And this, you may have heard it said that the Democrats are now the party of the wealthy, of the extremely wealthy, and that they have, in fact, given up on blue-collar workers, on the working class. And if I'm correct, I believe there's even kind of fairly big union support for Trump at this point, that large parts of that old voter base for the Democrats have abandoned them for Republicans. And when you see Trump confront somebody like China, who's decimated manufacturing in the United States, well, I mean, it's got to look a lot like there's somebody fighting for you for a change, right? Whether or not you hate Trump, I mean, you can at least understand that, right? And you can see that as a big motivation, right? Not just throwing the R word at them all the time, as if that just explains everything, when it actually explains nothing. Anyway, we're right at the end now, and we were always warned to fear the government overreach of the intelligence agencies. Again, that used to be a leftist thing. That used to be a democratic thing. Too much government power. But anyway, let's continue. Even as ex-high officials go on liberal networks, warping their use of their security clearances to contextualize their own previous unethical behavior. Of all the strange symptoms of Trump derangement syndrome, progressive self-immolation is the strangest. You know, I don't find it that strange, to be honest with you, because when you have a kind of a postmodern ideology that's incoherent, that plans to fight racism by being racist, that actually benefits more by creating poverty rather than getting rid of it, what you've got is a house of cards that's unstable, that's incoherent and unstable. Again, preserving free speech by banning speech. These are all incoherent ideas. It's a house of cards. So, the self-immolation, I don't find that strange. It seems to be a logical conclusion to an incoherent ideology, which seems to be mostly built around fear and narcissism. Anyway, I really enjoyed that article from Victor Davis Hanson, as I always do. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please subscribe, because the algorithm does not like independent content like this. It wants you to watch cable news clips and stuff, and this is way more fun and enlightening than that, don't you think? So please subscribe if you want to see more, because they're going to try and hide it from you. If you don't have time to watch all my videos, please listen to the podcast if you want. You can listen to it while you're running or in the gym or whatever. It's Radio Baloney. It's on Google Podcasts and iTunes and Apple Podcasts and CastBox and Spotify and basically all of them. So look it up, Radio Baloney. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.